Welcome to another episode of Rob Wright's Gen X Pop Culture. And on today's show, we're going to talk about one of the great Halloween songs, videos of all time. This is Michael Jackson's Thriller. If you're ever going to a Halloween party, which you may be doing this weekend with Halloween coming up on Tuesday as we're recording this, most of the songs that you'll hear, one of them should be Thriller because it's the classic Halloween song. So today, I'm going to talk to you about the song itself, how it came about. We're going to get into the video, which is incredible. If you haven't ever seen it, it's worth a look. It's practically a movie. It's a 14-minute movie, and it's a lot of fun. It's a great video that was just fantastic, especially for its time. We're going to also talk about the album a little bit, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my favorite songs from the Thriller album. So let's get into it. Let's talk about this great song from Michael Jackson back in the 80s, and we'll talk about the video right after that. So let's talk about Thriller here. So the song itself was seen as an epic novelty song. It wasn't released right away on the Thriller album, and it was not intended to be released as a single, which is kind of shocking to us fans now. But back then, it wasn't released. It was the last single released on the Thriller album. So the mid 1983, it was released early 1983. Sales for the album began to decline towards the end of the year, and Jackson was obsessed with the sales figures, and he wanted to stay at the top, and he wanted a number one album. So Epic tried to help him out to get it back on top. His manager, Frank DeLeo, came up with the idea of releasing Thriller with a new video and a new concept in making videos. So it was released as a single in the U.S. in January of 1984 after the video was released, and it was the final single from Thriller. The cool thing about this song was it was kind of a funk song with repeating synthesizer bass line, and with the lyrics of a horror film and a horror theme, as you can kind of see with some of the zombies on this slide here. It was written by Rod Temperton, who is writing a theatrical song that reflected Jackson's love of films. So Jackson was a big fan of American Werewolf in London and some classic horror films, and you see some of those elements in the video if you watch it, especially the classic Night of the Living Dead, with the zombies, and your classic Wolfman horror movies with the wolf part, which is just really incredible. We'll get to the video in a minute here. But the song features sound effects. So you hear door slams, you hear creaking things, you hear things that you would hear in a horror movie in the actual song. And then they got the great Vincent Price to record part of the song. It entered the Billboard charts at number 20, and then steadily rose, and it peaked at number 4 on the Billboard charts. So it was a very successful song, another top 10 hit for Michael on this album. This album was just fantastic. We'll get into it later, but it's the best-selling album of all time, and it was one of my favorites as a kid growing up. Just to give you an idea what this was like, so Michael Jackson came out with this album, and immediately people flocked to it with a couple of the great songs that we'll talk about a little bit later on this. And I bought the album as a kid. I had it on tape, and I would listen to it to cover. It's just a fantastic album. 9 tracks. Really, there's not any bad songs on it. It's a great album, a fantastic one. And Thriller's a fantastic song, but the video was just incredible. And just from my perspective, the video, there was always talk about the video coming out, and the lead up was with MTV and Showtime, and I'll get into that a little bit more as I talk about the video. But from our perspective, what happened was they had trailers for it coming out, and they had the whole making of it, and then the video premiered, and we taped it as kids, and we'd watch it over and over again, and MTV would show it over and over again, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that, and then Showtime showed it as well. And it was just amazing, all the stuff that they did with it. It was revolutionary for videos, because usually music videos were kind of simple. They got a little bit artsy, but not too fancy. This is a full-fledged film, and it just was incredible. It was a lot of fun to watch, and let me just talk about this video, because my perspective on it's one of my favorite videos. It transitioned videos for the time. Artists started making more creative videos after Michael Jackson did this, but Michael was ahead of the game in this, and he really shined in this video. So, as I alluded to with the production of this, Michael Jackson was a big fan of American Werewolf in London, and he contacted director John Landis and asked him if he would direct a video. Well, at that time, that was kind of taboo. You didn't have movie directors directing music videos. It just wasn't something done in Hollywood. So Landis agreed if they turned it into a short film, which Michael was all for. So they had the idea of doing the short film, and they had a budget of $900,000, which was a lot back then, especially for a single video. Oh my goodness, that's a lot in 1980s money. So the funding was interesting. Epic Studios, who did Michael Jackson's album, wasn't sold on doing a huge video for Thriller. They wanted to support Michael, but they weren't interested in doing a big budget Hollywood video for this. So they only contributed $100,000. So what happened in order to get funding is they agreed to do a making of along with the video, and they sold the rights to Showtime and MTV. Showtime contributed $300,000 to get the exclusive cable rights, and that's one of the channels that I saw it on was Showtime. Back then, Showtime and cable companies, and they still do it some today, is where you'll get the movie of the month or the documentary of the month, and they'll show it several times a month. Well, that's what they did with Thriller. And then MTV wanted the exclusive video rights to it. Now, back in the day, MTV did not put up money for music videos. That was not their game. Their game was to have the artists make the videos and then have them broadcast them on MTV. They didn't usually contribute to the making of videos, but MTV wanted the exclusive video rights to this so that they could be the ones to premiere the video and the making of. And so they kicked in another $250K for the exclusive rights. And the other person that contributed was Michael Jackson himself. Wow. That's a lot of money for an artist to contribute to one video for one song on an album. Usually didn't see artists doing that, and I don't think you see many artists doing that today. Usually they contribute their own money and get reimbursed in some way. You don't see them do what Michael Jackson did. So this project was very important to Michael. He was heavily invested in it, and he wanted this video to put his album over the top again and just be the greatest of all time, and he did it. It's amazing. So basically with all the funding and set, they assembled the crew, and one of the most unique things about this is they assembled at the time the largest makeup crew of all time. They had over 40 makeup artists just for Michael alone in this, and you didn't see that. I mean, most big budget films didn't have that many makeup artists, and you see their amazing work here, especially with the werewolf scenes at the beginning, where in the upper left-hand side you see his first starting to turn, then the bottom right-hand side you see him a little bit more, and then the full-fledged wolf in the upper right on this slide. It's just amazing and fantastic. And originally for the wolf, Michael wanted to do a whole full four-legged monster, and they kind of talked him out of it because they wanted him to be able to have the movement and the dance movement for this. So they had him do just the wolf man, where they did his hands and his head really were what they did with the makeup, and they used the bomber jacket or the Letterman's jacket to really cover the rest, so he didn't have to do a full-fledged wolf suit. And as you can see, as a fan of Wolfman and Teenage Werewolf movies, what they did was they did a setting in the 50s where you see the girl in the poodle skirt, and you see him with the rolled up jeans and the 50s car and the 50s Letterman's jacket, and it's just fantastic how they did that. And so Rick Barker was the main makeup guy and the main costume designer, and he was sick of doing your traditional werewolf. And so what he did uniquely with Michael's werewolf look was he made it more of a cat-like creature. So you see in these scenes, you see kind of the cat eyes at the bottom here, and then you see kind of the wolf face is more cat-like with the mane and the ears. He wanted to make it more panther and more cat-like than your traditional werewolf, and I think it really paid off. It's really awesome and incredible. For the scene in modern times of it, so the werewolf scene is them watching themselves on the movie screen, and then it cuts to them in the movie theater. They went for more of a hip, casual look. And one of the most important things that came out of this was Michael Jackson's leather jacket. So he had this black and red leather jacket, which I think is in one of the museums now, but it's just historic and it's iconic. And it was one of the ones that was big in the 1980s. It and the Beat It jacket replicas were sold. There was always the who's the cool kid in school that would whose parents would buy them either the Beat It jacket or this jacket, replica of it. That's how popular it was. It was amazing. So the person that choreographed this was the same one who did Beat It. And if you watch the video for Beat It is amazing video, amazing choreography in that. The choreography in this was just incredible. Getting the zombies to do their dance, their back and forth dance, and all the dance moves that were done with this was just amazing. It's phenomenal. They did a phenomenal job. And for the girl in this, Jennifer Beals was originally going to be cast, but she turned it down. So they got former Playmate Ola Ray, and she got the part, and she was fantastic in this. And this really helped her career out, and she got several movie parts after this video. During the filming, there was a good chemistry between her and Michael, and apparently they shared very intimate moments while filming. And so she did fantastic. He did fantastic. Let's talk a little bit more about the release of this. So the release was originally to a private audience on November 14th, 1983 at the Crest Theater. And some very famous people were in attendance. Diana Ross, Warren Beatty, Prince, and Eddie Murphy were all in attendance. Michael Jackson decided not to join the audience or get in front of the audience. He wanted to stay in the projection booth so he could see their reaction to it, because he really wanted to gauge how the audience felt about this video. So they showed the video, and it got a standing ovation in the theater. And then Eddie Murphy jumped up and said, "Hey, let's show it again." And they showed it again because it was only 14 minutes, which was really cool. Basically, the video and the making of documentary premiered on MTV a few weeks later on December 2nd, 1983. And MTV would not only show the documentary and the video, but they would advertise, "Hey, we're going to show it again, this next hour." And then they would do blocks where they would show it back to back for one whole half hour of the video, twice in 1 hour. So you had 14 minutes and then a commercial break, and then they'd show it again. And it just was a showstopper. Everybody wanted to watch this video. It was the main thing that you wanted to watch with MTV. Hey, when's Thriller coming on? When's Thriller coming on? You would watch that. And then the documentary was released by itself on video, and it sold 1 million copies with like that. I mean, it just is one of the best-selling videos for a music video of all time. And so it required a theatrical release to be eligible for an Academy Award, which was interesting. It didn't get nominated, but what they did was they originally got it to be shown in front of Disney's Fantasia, the re-release of Fantasia, which is very interesting because you're going to show a cool horror video right in front of a children's Disney cartoon musical, which is fascinating. I don't know what they were thinking of that, but they were trying to get it out there so they could be eligible for Academy Awards, and unfortunately it wasn't nominated at all. The video boosted the sales of the album, and it became the best-selling album of all time. It won the Best Concept Video, Best Male Video, and Video of the Year at the MTV Music Video Awards, and I'll talk more about those a little bit later. The success was a surprise to everyone except Michael. And Michael Jackson really knew what he was doing. He's very confident in this, and this video and this album really cemented him as the king of pop. I mean, just amazing stuff for this video. I love this video. Tell me what you think about this video in the comments, and we're going to get into the rest of Thriller, because you can't talk about just this video and this song without talking about this great album. So this album had some unique beginnings. So despite the critical acclaim and a hit record off the wall in his last album in 1979, Jackson still felt undervalued by the music industry. What he wanted to do was he wanted to be the biggest and wealthiest star in show business. And he felt his previous album, Off the Wall, should have been up for a Grammy and Album of the Year, and he felt it should have won, but unfortunately it didn't. So for his next album, Jackson wanted to create an album where every song was a hit. He questioned why you have just a few hits and then some B-side songs. And he's like, people don't like that. I don't like that when I buy other albums. Let's make an album where every song's a hit song that somebody wants to listen to. And usually that was unheard of back then because you just have a couple of hits and then you're on to your next album. And you wanted to be able to save some of your good material for your next album. Well, Michael said, no, I want a hit album where every song is a hit. And that was unique and very interesting. Basically, that was his whole purpose for recording this. And so recording began in April of 1982 with producer Quincy Jones, who produced his last album. And it had several guest artists on it. One of those being Paul McCartney, then Eddie Van Halen, and you had the whole band of Toto was around for a lot of these songs and a lot of recording of these songs. And they're significant with their guitar and drum play in several of them, particularly Beat It. Vincent Price also, like I mentioned in Thriller, was another guest star on the album. So let's talk about a little bit about the music. So the album itself is phenomenal because it had a blend of different genres. You had a little bit of the post-disco genre, some really cool funk, some pop and rock, and there's R&B mixed throughout it. So it really transcended different genres. And as you listen to the album, you get a different feel with every song. That's why it was so incredible and so much fun to listen to. Jackson wrote 4 of the 9 tracks, and the songs he wrote were You Want to Be Starting Something, The Girl Is Mine, Beat It, and Billie Jean. The unique thing about Michael is that he didn't actually write these songs down and do a write-up. What he would do is he would record them in a recording device so that he could memorize the words and lyrics so that he knew them from memory, and then he could add his famous dance scenes to them. So when you would see live performances of him doing Billie Jean, he did all that work in his head and memorizing all the lines so that he had it down so cold to where he had all kinds of incredible dance moves, and he knew where he wanted those to do it because he knew his song so well from his creative thought of it. And I strongly encourage, if you watch the Black Entertainment Awards, which we'll talk about a little bit, Billie Jean performance, just phenomenal dance moves. That's where he moonwalked for the first time, and it was incredible. I'll talk about a little bit more about that later on because, oh my gosh, it set the world on fire at the time. So Beat It was a heavy rock song with solos by Eddie Van Halen and Steve Lukather. There's been several interviews that Steve Lukather has done where he talks about how much he did on Beat It. And you hear the initial guitar on Beat It, that's Steve Lukather, but that amazing guitar solo in the middle of the song, that's Eddie Van Halen. And it was unusual to get an artist like that to really be on part of your album. And really, Eddie did it without a whole lot of credits. At the time, we weren't sure that it was Eddie Van Halen until you bought the album and saw in the liner that he was credited with it. But it's just an amazing song. We'll get to Beat It in a minute here. But Rod Temperton also wrote Thriller, and he wanted to call it Starlight or Midnight. And, Michael said, no, this is more of a werewolf. Let's call it a Thriller. So that's how Thriller got its name. Billie Jean was a very personal song to Jackson because he struggled with obsessed fans. And so he wrote that about this obsession with the fans. And then Human Nature was co-written by Steve Porcaro of Toto and Quincy Jones. And then PYT by James Ingram and Quincy Jones. And then The Lady in My Life was written by Temperton. 7 songs were released as singles. So out of the 9 tracks, 7 of them were released, which is unheard of. You didn't see albums that did that. Most of the albums, the idea back in the 80s was to get as much on the top 40 radio as possible. And usually it was maybe 2 or 3, 4 if you were lucky, to get in the top 40, and then you moved on to your next album and your next effort. Well, with Michael Jackson, this album, he had 7 of them, and they were all hits. And it's just amazing how much of this album was on the radio and got play. And, like I said, this is why it's the best-selling album of all time and why it was so much fun to listen to. So, the interesting thing with a couple of other of the songs, the first song that was released was "The Girl Is Mine," and it reached number 2 in the Billboard. That's the song with him and Paul McCartney, and you see some of the promotional shots for here on the left. They did a video with it, which is really interesting, a lot of fun. It was kind of them in a traveling show is how the video went. And it was just fantastic. A fun video, a great song. It was the first release. The next one blew the charts down. It was Billie Jean. Billie Jean went to number 1 and stayed at number 1 for 7 weeks, which was hard to do back at the time. I mean, 1983, the Billboard charts to chart for nearly 2 months at number 1 was just amazing. And Billie Jean is a phenomenal song on there. Beat It was the 3rd song released, and it spent 3 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard. The 4th release was Want to Be Starting Something, which peaked at number 5. Human Nature was next, and it peaked at number 7. Then Pretty Young Thing was released, and it peaked at number 10. And then finally, as I said, Thriller came out in 1984, and it peaked at number 4. So he had, all 70 songs were in the top 10, which is just amazing and phenomenal for an artist to do that without it being a greatest hits album. I mean, Thriller, now if we look back on Michael Jackson, Thriller could be a greatest hits album for Michael Jackson because it just had so many wonderful songs. And that's how Michael Jackson wanted it. So the accolades for this album were just incredible. So it was the number 1 album of 1983. It's the greatest selling album of all time. It won a record 8 Grammys. Which is just unheard of. That's just amazing for an album. And then the AMA Awards, it won 8 of those. So it swept all the awards shows. It's considered one of the greatest albums of all time, and it's in the Library of Congress. One other thing about this album is that it kind of transcended some racial barriers, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention that because it really brought Michael Jackson in the spotlight, and it really opened it up for other African-American entertainers in the pop industry to come about. And it really, really helped it. And it's phenomenal. I mean, everybody liked Michael Jackson back in the day. I mean, he was the biggest seller, the biggest hit. I remember in school, we were always talking, we had the debate of, did you want either one of the Michael Jackson's jackets or did you want the white glove? And they would play this all the time. This is the era when breakdancing became popular, and Michael Jackson did his moonwalk with Billie Jean, and when people saw that, they just hit the floor. I mean, every kid was trying to do a moonwalk. A lot of us couldn't successfully do it, but it just was phenomenal. Just the type of dancing and this type of things that just came about, and it became an important part of pop culture and still is today. If you haven't gotten the album or haven't listened to it, I definitely recommend this one. This one is just a phenomenal album. Go out and buy it. Go out and watch some of these videos and listen to some of these songs. And now we're going to kind of get into my favorite songs of the album. It's hard to really narrow it down because there's so many wonderful hits and great songs on this album, but I'm going to do my best with it coming up. Okay, let's run through all 9 of these songs on the album. Now, they could intermix at any time, but there are some definite songs that I just absolutely love on this album. Like I said, every single one of these songs is really good. This album is almost like a greatest hits album of Michael Jackson, and it's the reason why it's one of the greatest selling albums of all time. It is the greatest selling album of all time, and it's phenomenal. I like all these songs, but here's a kind of order if I would have to choose my favorites on this album. And this is certainly my opinion. Please feel free to share your favorite songs from this album and your thoughts on both the album Thriller, the song, the video, and any of these other songs that you want to share. And let's have a good discussion on this. But here we go. The Lady in My Life would be my number 9. It's an okay, catchy song. And then Baby Be Mine is another ballad that I would put at number 8. And then we're getting into his 7 top hits on this one. So my number 7 would be Want to Be Starting Something. It's a very catchy song. I like this song. And when you hear it, you're going to be saying the chorus over and over again. Want to be starting something. Want to be starting something. So it's a great song. PYT is my next one at number 6. It was one that you would sing over and over. PYT, pretty young thing. And then you would see part of the song had TLC, Tender Love and Care. Just a great song, a phenomenal sing-along song. When they played it at the roller skating rinks back in the 80s, yes, we did roller skating rinks back in the 80s. It was a lot of fun. You would have PYT as one of the songs, along with several of these other ones on here. And, people would, PYT and kind of sing it out loud as well. The next one is the one with Paul McCartney, The Girl Is Mine. I really like this song because it's a good trade-off between Michael's lyrics and Paul's lyrics. And I think both he and Sir Paul McCartney do a phenomenal job singing it. They also had one other duet that they did together, Say, 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 which is also another great song. But this one was his first one that they released. And it just was a fun, catchy song. And it's basically them going back and forth, arguing over who gets the girl. They were both chasing the same woman, which I think is awesome and unique and a lot of fun. And it's a great listen. My number 3 hit is actually going to be Human Nature, which I think is a phenomenal song that doesn't get enough accolades on it. It really delves into a deep philosophical question. When you ask the question, why, tell them that it's human nature. Michael really is reflecting back about attitudes and behaviors, particularly in the late 70s, early 80s. And it's a good song to listen to, and if it makes you kind of think. And I would say go listen to it again and think through that song, because there's a lot of interesting aspects of that song that we can really apply today as well. My number 3 song is the title track, Thriller. We talked about it a lot on this video. It's incredible. It's one that they always played at Halloween parties. And like I said, this one at skating rinks. And you have everybody doing the dance moves with your hands, with the zombie. Just amazing. And like I said, this video was just revolutionary. The video was just incredible. And every time I listen to the song, I think about the video. If you haven't seen it, go watch the video on there, on YouTube or wherever you can find it. It's phenomenal. A phenomenal song. Just all that went into it was just amazing. So my number 2, my number 1 song. So for my number 2 song, if you would have asked me when I was a kid, I would have told you that this is my favorite Michael Jackson song. But as I grew up and as I grew into an adult, a different one became my number 1 song. So Beat It is my number 2 song. It was my favorite as a kid. I always liked the zipper jacket that you see here in the middle. I love that jacket, and I love the song Beat It, particularly the guitar solos by Steve Lukather and Eddie Van Halen. Just amazing. The video was really cool because what he went for was kind of a gang fight scene, kind of like West Side Story. And it's really about, being a youth, and you don't have to be in a fight to be a man. You can walk away and still hold your own. And that's what this song is kind of about. And you see the two gangs forming in the video, and then you see the dance choreography and the fight. It's just phenomenal. It's amazing. It's interesting. And you see Michael Jackson in a pool hall in this shot, and you see him dancing with the different gangs that were going to fight and go toe-to-toe. Just amazing video, phenomenal. And this song was just, like I said, it was my favorite as a kid. It was just so awesome, and I loved hearing it on the radio. I would play it over and over on the album. It was absolutely hands down one of my favorites. But as an adult, my number one song, because I gained so much more appreciation for it growing up, is Billie Jean. I love Billie Jean. It's probably my favorite Michael Jackson song of all time. I just love the lyrics. I love the music. I love the way you dance to it. And, the video was kind of interesting. You see it on the bottom screen here where he's walking, and as he steps, it would light up. That was a pretty cool video, but the main thing was what he did at the BET Awards. Oh my goodness. If you have not seen his performance of Billie Jean at the BET Awards, go YouTube it right now because it's just phenomenal. He brought the house down. So Michael Jackson in that video, he did something with the Jackson 5 as a reminisce, and then he did Billie Jean, and his dance moves in that were incredible. I just the way he moved with his feet was just phenomenal. And like I said, it was the first time he did the moonwalk. And if you see him moonwalk in that, it's phenomenal. It's incredible how he moonwalked and he did other things with his toes. And just the way that he did that is just incredible athleticism. And I really appreciate that about Michael and just the way he did that. Like I said, in school growing up, when after he did that, everybody wanted to do the moonwalk. Everybody got into breakdancing, where you wanted to do all those things, all the different dance moves. The worm and the robot was mixed in, and different moves here. One of the big things that they tried to discourage was kids actually tried to do the head spin, and it was discouraged because there were people that would break their necks trying to do that. So that one was kind of discouraged. But the backspin was huge, the moonwalk, all of that, trying to incorporate those dance moves. Kids just went crazy for it, and we tried to do them. I mean, it was phenomenal. It was just one of those things. And then, playing this at the roller skating rink or at dance parties, it just Beat It, Billie Jean, Thriller, PYT were some of the big hits to dance to or to roller skate to back in the 80s. So what are some of your memories of these songs? What's your favorite? What did you think of Thriller on the album? Tell me below in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.